I mean, what do you get when you get a former FBI agent and a pastor in a conversation?
I don't know how you make a combo like that, but I'm assuming that it's gonna be a confession at some point.
Right.
I'm Davis.
I'm Dill. Welcome to The Upper Level, podcast created by two brothers unpacking relevant issues.
So what is this podcast really gonna be about?
Who is Davis and Dill?
I mean, we've been kind of hyping it up a little bit on social media. We've been depending on some people that already know us to kind of follow. I think we may have like a small following, but it's getting better and it's getting bigger. So I think people would probably want to know like how you and I kind of met and how our relationship and friendship started. So how did I meet you, Deal?
We met at this place called North Bay.
Okay.
North Bay is where it all began, where we work with, strangely, environmental science, but we were hired for character development.
You don't have a degree in environmental science.
I know I do not, and I'm not a farmer.
I remember meeting you there, and I've never met anybody with the same initials as me before.
Right.
The only difference is when you shorten your name, you use the two L's.
I use two L's, you use one L. You know, both our names is Phil, and that distinguished us, which was obvious to me, because he's a lot taller. I'm sure there.
See, I wasn't gonna get into that. That's what we got the whole production team for. So when we met, and I remember, we were roommates for a time. We were at North Bay, and then I met my wife, and you were gracious enough to marry us.
For the
Right?
beautiful wedding.
Still
You've now
married.
been married for
12
years.
12 years going in March.
Wow.
And I'm putting that on tape, but if I'm wrong, I'm definitely going to hear about it later. But I believe it. So
matter of fact, let me text right now.
you officiated our wedding, and then we kind of went in some different directions. So so that was roughly around 2010.
2010. And yeah, we went to separate ways. We're at North Bay working. I went into full-time ministry, working in Baltimore as a executive minister in Baltimore, off in Cary Street, in the heart of Baltimore.
How did you end up with that gig, though?
Well, actually, while I was at the North Bay, I was still a part-time youth pastor, but opportunity came for me to transition as the assistant pastor at the church, helping in that area. Did great work under Dr. Lisa Ware. And even from there, I end up accepting a call as executive minister to Richmond, Virginia. And now, currently, I've been pastoring for 8 years in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I've been here, there, and everywhere.
So there's always something I wanted to ask you, and I know it feels like an interview, but like, how did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, man, it was a calling. It was a passion. What's crazy is even before I went to North Bay, is that I had an opportunity to work for the government and opportunity to work for North Bay, which is a nonprofit. And I remember one of my friends saying, "You got to determine which one's going to bring you closer to your future."
Okay.
Neither one of these jobs is what you want ultimately, but which one's going to bring you closer to your future?
It's going to put you on that next step.
And I knew and I felt a call for ministry, and so I felt working at a nonprofit such as North Bay would help me, and it did. So that's how I ended up with on that track.
Yeah, because I know, like, we joked about this before. It's like, if you turn down a government job, like somebody's in your ear from another generation, boy, you better not turn down that good, solid job.
Right.
But I think even for me, and it's funny because somebody recently was like kind of helping me or working through my resume, and they were like, "Look, I'm looking through this, and at some point you've done like so many different things, because I didn't really have a vision like what I wanted to do with myself." So that's why I wanted to know.
Well, yeah, man. So let's back up. Like, so I told you about my track and where I've been, but where have you been once you left the Bay?
I got married, and I was kind of still in that space. Like, really, I wanted to teach, I wanted to educate, but I wanted to do it at like the college level. So clearly, there's some other steps you need to do beyond like just a bachelor's. You got to like get a master's degree, I think. But I had just gotten married. I left North Bay, and I took a position down in Baltimore City doing community engagement for Baltimore City Public Schools. It was excellent work, but it was one of those positions where it was like contingent upon a contract. So anyway, I'm starting to try to think through at that time, like, what is my next steps going to be? Because again, you're married, you're responsible for someone. And I was just going to go back to grad school. I was going to go back to grad school, and it's funny, I talked to a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Bob, about it. He was like, "Yeah, you and Bethany, you'll be fine. You'll go to grad school, you'll eat pizza. You know how he makes everything just sound like it's going to be all right." And so that was the plan. I gotten into grad school. We were all set to go. I was going to work part-time. And then Bethany comes home one day. I'll never forget this. Like, she'll come home, she opened the door of the apartment. She just had this look on her face. And she was like, "Yo, I'm pregnant." And so right then, in my mode, I'm saying, like,
what was going through your head when you heard that? Like, what was going through? Because
I think it's what always happens to me. I've got to fix it.
Wow.
You know, I can't just go to school and just kind of eat pizza, right?
Exactly.
2 lives I'm responsible for now. Wow. And it's funny, we'll get into it in later episodes. And so I kind of started calling some friends and reaching out and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And, you know, I'd had interest in the BPD, in the Baltimore Police Department. My father was a police officer in Baltimore. He never talked about it. He had passed away when I was young, so I didn't have a chance to really talk to him about it. He probably would have told me, do something else, boy. But so I went and took the test for the BPD, and then I ended up, you know, joining the Baltimore Police Department, becoming a detective, and everything. You know, I don't share this that often, but it was like I was trying to do something to fix things, but it almost cost me the thing I was trying to fix.
Wow, break that down. So you're trying to fix something. You were trying to fix what?
I was trying to fix it and feel like I'm doing something for my wife and my child, right? Like, you know, going to school and just working part-time, to me, that didn't feel like enough. I'm not being manly enough, right? And so I go out and do something, and then I go and join a police department that requires so much of you, so much of your time, pulls so much away from you. It almost cost me my marriage, right? And so, but in the meanwhile, I continually like working through and talking to friends. They're like, hey man, like you're a squared away guy. You made detective really quick. You were in the military. You got your degree. Why don't you go to the feds? And so I started making that process, went through it, you know, became a special agent in the FBI. And then in 2020, again, you know, I had to make some transitionary moves.
And so how long were you on the force?
So I was a detective for 5 years in Baltimore, and in the Bureau about 5 years as well. So 10 years total in law enforcement. Really kind of went into it thinking like, I'm gonna fix a problem. Right. And then you get there, and then you realize like, wow, I really like took a 10-year detour.
Isn't that kind of sometimes how what's embedded in us or even taught us? Like we take that ambition, we drive, we do the best of what we do. It's also, it's kind of like when you get those different points of, for me, ministry, yours was in the agency, it hits you and it's it's a word that we use that I call successfully bored. Yeah. Because you have a measure of success, but you're bored are feeling unfulfilled. Yeah. Now, somebody would listen to either one of us and say, you're absolutely crazy. You are FBI agent. You are a minister. You are pastoring now. You are absolutely crazy. But there was still a void. And it was through that void that we actually reached out. And this is the thing, because men don't talk, so we start with jokes. You know what I'm saying? We start with jokes. Sending each other sending messages, stuff like that. But it was amazing, 2 different fields of career-wise, but still feeling that nagging for more to contribute in different areas of our life.
We decided like through Instagram and phone conversations, and in 2020, I really needed our friendship. Yeah. That was why this was important. That was another thing that kind of was the genesis of this podcast, because I know I was just feeling like pretty isolated, no one to reach out to, and it was such a difficult time.
And you know, and I was feeling the same way. You know, so I want to be very clear. And I think a lot of brothers feel that way, and we don't find the courage to reach out. We're all dealing with different stuff, no matter what the career, what the background, married, single. We find out that we're dealing with the same things, but we look on the outside. Everybody says, oh, they got it made. Everything is perfect. Meanwhile, we all struggling with something, right? And
so that's what was the genesis of this podcast, and I think this is what people can expect from each episode, is that, you know, you and I are going to talk about our lives in a very, I think, open way, but it's that friendship. People are going to be able to like almost hear a text message conversation. Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? That's kind of a way.
This is your group text.
This is your group text message, right? And so that's why we created it, and I think that's what people can expect from us. Just that authenticity.
And we're going to tackle it all: race, relationships, those relevant issues. If you're dealing with it, we're going to talk about it.
As a man, I always felt the need to be a hero, man. I always wanted to be like that, you know, that guy that comes in and saves the day or just fixes the problem. And I've based a lot of my career choices on trying to be the hero. But you and I have had this kind of conversation before where being that hero could possibly just be totally wrong.
It could be totally wrong. And I don't know why we feel the need to be the hero in every situation.
I guess it's just a man thing. I mean, listen, you know, it's funny. We were talking about how I ended up joining the BPD, and it's interesting. I didn't think about it when I was growing up as a kid, but now as we started doing this podcast and I was like going through some memories, it's a funny story, it's relatable. So for the audience that doesn't know, I grew up as a preacher's kid. My parents actually, they left the church that we were going to as kids and started their first church in the living room of our home. Right. So imagine being like 8 years old, you wake up, you get breakfast,
and you gotta get ready for church.
You go upstairs, put your clothes on, then you go back downstairs. Your brother's on the piano, your sister's leading praise and worship, and you're playing like
drums, right?
Right. Finish up church, everything's good. Go back upstairs, change your clothes, go back downstairs and start playing Genesis. Wow. And so that was our family's life, and for years it was that way. And the church grew, and then we ended up getting a building and things like that. And one of the funny things that always happens as churches grow and you get a building is you always get that one member that donates the church van. and so, but it was a benefit to the ministry. But it just so happened to fall when my brother and sister were in college that I was the one that just got his driver's license. So who do you think had to drive the church van?
Church van driver. Let's sit here and imagine that you were the church van driver.
It was called the Blue Whale. That's what I call it. That's what my friends called it because I tried to be cool. My friends had cars. They didn't have great cars, but they definitely had to drive around the church van.
Wait, was this the church van and your vehicle, personal vehicle?
Yes, for a little while. A part of my duties were to pick people up for church and pick, some of the people up for youth group. And so one night, I'm picking kids up from youth group, and I had one of the deaconesses in the car. And I picked some, we were driving, I forgot exactly where we were, but I was driving the van, and I heard somebody like throw something at the van. It was like a rock or something like that. So first the rock broke the glass.
Oh no,
right?
Church van.
And then they threw another rock, and the rock hit the little girl in the head.
Oh no.
Like, and so I hear her start to cry, and I was probably like 17 or something like that. Now mind you, like no police powers, no, just being stupid. I put the van in park. I get out and I call myself chasing somebody to try to find the kids that was throwing the rocks because something in my mind said that was like the thing.
What you had to do. You had to save the day.
I had to save the day. Now, mind you, fast forward, going to the BPD, that was probably a very stupid thing.
Absolutely.
But in my mind, and I think the way I was built, it was like, yo, I got to protect.
So at an early age, that was probably your first sense of being a hero.
Yeah, and then it kind of played out. Then the real world hits. Mm-hmm. So when I become a detective, well, not even when I become a detective, when I first get out of police academy, I'm on patrol. And for the listeners, I was in the Central District, which is downtown Baltimore, where the power plant, the stadiums, all that stuff. That's where I was at. And I worked the midnight shift. Busy area. And the midnight shift is even more difficult for that because that's when everybody comes down to that location. Right. Other places, maybe people are going to sleep during the midnight shift, but downtown, the block, all that stuff, that's where people start to kind of congregate. And so I'm on patrol, probably like my third night in patrol, get a call over the radio, like, hey, there's an assault happening downtown. Right. Boom, I'm gonna be the hero here. I'm gonna jump in, answer the radio, kind of, didn't really have to speed through, it wasn't that far away, but I put my lights and sirens on, I'm listening to my radio, people are calling it out like, yo, we see the assault. So I see this guy attacking, I found out later it was his girlfriend. I mean, he is like on top of her, like trying to lay, blows and trying to choke her. So automatically that same hero kicks in, boom, put the car in park, get out, tackle the guy, save the day, or at least I thought at that point I saved the day. Other units come, we handcuff him, put him in the wagon, take him down, do all the stuff by procedure to the police department. We finally get the victim in the vehicle, and I call for some senior officers to figure out what they like. Just get her report, see what she wants to do, and then you transport her home. Mm-hmm. And so I'm talking to the young lady, and I'm saying to her, okay, where would you like me to take you? And so she kept saying, well, what's going to happen to the guy? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, he's going to, he assaulted you. We got it on camera. He's going to go to jail. I got your statement. She was like, well, I don't want anything to happen to him. I don't want him to go to jail. Wow. And can you take me back to his house? And I'm not going to make a report. And so I think early on in my mind, I was trying to figure out, like, wait a minute,
Right. You saved her from that, but she didn't want to be saved from that.
No.
She didn't want to be saved from that.
Now, mind you, that's a difficult situation for a woman to be in, and no judgment there. But I think for me, it started challenging my thought processes about, like, why am I out here jumping out and trying to do this if that's not what a person wants?
And that plays a lot, as men do every day, saving a day and not really knowing what is needed sometimes. And I think sometimes we can never underestimate our need to be needed.
Yeah, how about that?
Sometimes we put our cape on, try to be the hero, and we may not be needed. But we have that sense of being needed, and sometimes we will force a need when there is no need. In that particular situation, that's a difficult situation because she needed to be saved, she just didn't know it. But think about how many times we have stepped in because we felt we had to save the day when actually it wasn't even warranted.
That's the conviction, right? It's like in my mind, and not even just that situation, but even in situations in my home, with my children, even at school, with my, just in general, like, no, I have the right way.
Right.
I'm trained for this. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it the way it should be done.
And that's the thing. I think because we have been trained to fix things, we fix things. That's one of the reasons why I think some men don't really talk. It's like, what can I fix? If we find ourselves in a situation where we cannot have a quick fix or we don't have an answer, we shut down. On the outside, it looks like we're ignoring, but really we're just trying to process everything because we're not used to not having an answer. Think about it. Somebody asks us a question, we got a quick answer. Do this, do that. But sometimes I think we've put ourselves in situations trying to be a hero that they don't need to be a hero.
I mean, the funny thing is when, I found out I was going to have, my wife was pregnant with my first son and she came and was like, I'm pregnant. She never asked me to fix anything.
Right.
She didn't say, go join the police force. She didn't say a word. She was just like, yo, this is what's coming. In my mind, I jumped out there. And the interesting thing is, like in 2020, when I had some time to think about it, when I joined the BPD, the salary that I received when I joined the BPD was only a little bit higher than what I was going to get working and going to school full time, right? Wow. But in my mind, it's like, no, I'm doing something. And when my son comes, he's going to be proud because the reality is now, like 10 years later, I'm not in law enforcement. Yeah. Now I'm circling back, finish grad school, do all the things that I thought I was going to do then. Right. You know what I mean? And I'm open about the fact as a man that I still have that problem of going out and trying to fix things. Yeah, absolutely. And stepping out too fast.
And I think that is a problem. I think we need to redefine what a hero is, because sometimes people don't want us to save the day. They just want us to be present. They just want us to be there. And I think sometimes because we're so used to how can I fix it? What can I do? It's like, no, your presence is enough. And I think even particularly black men, we need to know that our presence makes a difference. I would say this to some of the men in our church. I'd say, you don't know by you showing up every Sunday what that does to some young man that doesn't have a father or a role model. Yeah. Every Sunday you show up, they can see a godly man, a man doing something. And I said, your mere presence makes a difference. And I think sometimes we forget that because in other arenas we might have been taken for granted.
Yeah. Or you're just an overachiever. You're saying, well, I can't just be here. I gotta be doing something. My saying was always, even in the bureau, I was like, yo, I've got to move the ball forward every day. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to, when I first went into the bureau, it was a senior agent there. He was a really good guy. He used to say to me all the time, he was like, listen, your mentality is like to move the ball forward, but sometimes things just take time. And you gotta take, that patience and work through it. And now, after 2020, I feel like I was the brakes were put on me. Like, yo, you can't fix this anymore. Right. Like, you're gonna work through this. There's no quick fix. Yeah. You're gonna sit here and take it, especially in 2020 when there was literally nothing to do.
Nothing you could do. Life had stopped.
Right, so there was no fixing it. Right. Like, I had no solution for my sons that had to go to school virtually. I had no answer to that. You know what I mean? And so now, when you're saying, like, let's redefine a hero, okay, what is a hero for us if we can't fix it? What does that look like?
I think for us is a hero is one, being present, but also just being a help. Sometimes we don't need to lead. We need to just listen. And I know that's hard for us.
It's hard.
But many times people come to us not because they're looking for an answer, they just want us to listen. And, we don't like listening. We don't like talking. We don't like listening. We are complicated. We're complicated.
When you said that and just listening, it made me think about some of the struggles I had just in terms of, being a detective, and there's other police officers that have the same conviction. Like, you called me here to help. Right. I'm doing the best I can with the tools that I'm given. Right. But you called me here now. I don't have. They're not asking me to be a psychiatrist now. They're not asking me to be a counselor, but I'm trying to do the best that I can with the tools that I have in front of me. And sometimes you just leave empty, especially for a person that thinks that you're going to fix something. You're right. I think sometimes your presence is all that's needed.
Again, we underestimate our presence because some people just need an example. They just need someone to be there for them.
Yeah.
Not a fixer. I mean, sometimes some people I just need to know I can cry with somebody. I can vent with somebody. Even when we're talking about, we were dealing with several different things in the career, but we were dealing with that unfulfillment. And sometimes just hearing that, man, someone else is dealing with that just helps.
Yeah, it just helps to feel like you're not alone.
Right.
And that's a challenge.
It's a hard thing because it's awkward for us to be still, to listen and be quiet. It is an awkward thing.
Even now, I feel like I always have to be moving, doing stuff.
Because we've been taught it's almost like an oppressor mentality where we feel like, honestly, that we have to do something. And I'm learning the same thing still too, is the courage to be still. You know what I'm saying? The courage to be still, because sometimes we are, like you said, we're always trying to push the ball that we miss the gift of the present because we're trying to rush to the next, not realizing we were built for this moment, but we're like, no, what's next? We gotta get over this pandemic. We gotta get over this stuff. No, you were built for this moment. What do you need to do in this moment? Or maybe you just need to regroup because we don't like to rest. Like we sleep, but we don't rest. That's a different kind of rest.
I feel like as we're having this conversation, I can't help but think like all the moments where, growing up and your parents always tell you, man, why don't you just go sit down somewhere? And so many opportunities where, if I, and not to be like so reflective that I'm picking on myself because I have been able to, and you've been able to accomplish a lot too through that mindset of pushing the ball forward because you can't accomplish anything if you're not constantly pushing.
Yeah, exactly.
But
we're not talking about the lazy people.
Right. But we are entering into, at least I feel like I'm entering into a different phase now where it's that strategic, I don't want to say strategic hero complex, but it's that strategic planning.
Right.
Okay, now this is where I know I can help and I can be effective.
Exactly.
And in these areas, I'm just going to have to let you figure that one out.
Right. You get in a place where you know what you can do and you know what you can't do. Yeah. You know boundaries. I think also in our life, we know what's going to take our peace and add to our peace in life.
That's true.
And that's something that we value more. But also, I think at different ages or cycles of life, we forget all that we have done. And when you look back at your resume and your body, like, wow, I've done a lot. So sit and enjoy it. There's times you got to sit and enjoy it because like you said, you had different things on your resume. I have different things on my resume. But when you sit down and look, like, oh my goodness, I needed that. You know what I'm saying? I think it catches up with us because we're trying to fix, and not realizing what we have now is the stuff we were praying for 5 and 10 years ago.
And it just showed up.
It just showed up. And we'll miss it if we try to say, now what's next? You know what I'm saying?
I like where you're going with this in terms of like, at some point, you have to delegate and you have to say, look, this is all I can do.
Right.
You have to take over.
Exactly.
And that kind of segues into like how we always want to come with our episodes with like, yo, where do we go? Yeah, where do we go from here?
Man, this is where we go. One, check the carriers that talk to one another because there's somebody else that's dealing with the hero complex just like you.
Always.
And y'all both need to talk and say, hey, chill.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point too in terms of delegating. I know as a pastor, you're very comfortable with delegating.
You have to because you have to have enough power to empower others.
Yeah, that's
because if you're always doing it, they never learn what that's really what discipleship is. It's like you got to help other people. You got to give them space to mess up. You got to, right. It's not because you want to fix it. Like, just do it right. Yeah, I know me. I'm very impatient, but you got to let them fall so they can learn how to stand. You know what I'm saying? You got to have the power to empower others. And it's hard sometimes.
It's hard because I know I see that with my sons all the time. Like, yo, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm really not doing them any service.
Right.
And it's so hard because, and that flows into a whole nother conversation about father, but it is so hard when you've seen you have the luxury and the foresight to have seen where this road is going to go.
Yeah.
Because we've lived through enough things that you know where this road is going to go. And that part of you kicks in like, yo, I have to stop you from going that way.
Exactly.
But the reality is we may not be able to stop it. The
Absolutely.
best thing that I've been able to find to do is just, it's just like this, it made me think of like this rap song I heard one time. It was like, you just try to drop enough jewels, try to give enough moments and try to empower them enough that when they reached that
rap song or a
crossroad.
hymn?
It was a rap song that's mixed with probably a hymn and idealism.
That's some boy that went to church and started rapping.
I know. That you provide them with enough so when they have to make that decision, they'll make the right one. And I think you brought up, and I want you to hit this because I don't want you to forget this, is redefining what a hero is.
Yeah, I think we have to redefine what a hero is. We don't always need to come save the day. Sometimes we just need to be in the day. You know what I'm saying? That we don't need to come and save the day. Sometimes just be in the day, just be there for them. And so we got to redefine that. We're not Superman, we're not Spider-Man, we're Black Panther, but we still have to, we don't have to save the day. Sometimes you just got to be in the day. You just got to be there with them, just hanging there with them.
Yeah, even if you know that they're gonna mess up. Well, man, like this was a good topic for me. I've just had that time to really be reflective on it and just think about how many times I've jumped out there, and you can think about how many people were in your ear, man, like, don't do this, don't do that. Yeah. I think we should close out.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Upper Level with Davis and Deal. Keep pushing forward and up. Make sure you check in on your friends.
Absolutely.
All right? And we'll catch you next time on The Upper Level. Thank you for listening to The Upper Level with Davis and Deal, brought to you by Forward Progress LLC, a collaborative consulting group specializing in transitioning your passion into industry by connecting people, resources, and ideas.
Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and The Upper Level Podcast, and check out the website, theupperlevelpodcast.com, to learn more about us and the ways we can connect.